Welcome to the Business Miracles Podcast. I'm Heather Dominick, founder of BusinessMiracles.com. Since 2010, I've been training highly sensitive entrepreneurs and leaders from around the globe to work less while making more impact and income by doing things differently. I'm so glad you've joined me. Listen in and get ready for a shift in the way you view yourself, your work, your life. A Business Miracle. This is A Course in Business Miracles podcast, episode 145, Consciously Creating Transition. Listen in to learn how to consciously create transitions for yourself to save energy, save time, save money, and make more impact and more income with less effort. Take charge of your nervous system. Take charge of your life. So today we are here to focus on the necessity of entry and re-entry and the power of re-return for ourselves as highly sensitive entrepreneurs and highly sensitive leaders. So let's start with what is entry, re-entry. Entry, re-entry is consciously creating transition. Please write that down. Consciously creating transition in order to support the reduction of nervous system overwhelm. And I'll say that again. Entry, re-entry is about consciously creating transition in order to support the reduction of nervous system overwhelm. So where did this teaching come from? This teaching came primarily from my previous experience with travel. So some of us have not been traveling lately, so just dial your brain back to the days of travel. And particularly in the earlier days of my business and leading in-person training retreats. And the preparation to attend a training retreat, as well as the unpacking and re-arrival back home from a training retreat were always massively fraught for me. And I was aware that something was not as it best could be as I kind of hovered outside of myself and watched myself take hours to pack with pretty much my entire closet spread out over my entire bed, as I really should have probably taken stock in plastic baggies for the number of them that I used to pack up all of the supplements and the powders and the potions and everything else that I really felt I needed with me in order to be able to be okay in the new place that I was going to. And then I would watch and witness myself as I came home, almost like I was a whirling dervish or that little devil cartoon, and unpacking like a freak as I also attempted to regain control of my environment that had been left in the hands of my sweetheart husband while I was gone. And wouldn't you know it, there was a spoon out of place and the washcloths weren't folded correctly. And why did he buy the wrong brand of almond milk? So again, had an awareness that this probably was not in my best service, but wasn't really sure how to work with it. Then my sweetheart husband and I went on a trip to Italy for our 10-year anniversary. And the trip was delightful in the same way as being at a training retreat in person was delightful. That trip was like a second honeymoon. And from the moment we got on the plane to travel there, and we were like sharing our headphones to watch the same movie and supporting each other with being able to sleep on the plane, and then just arriving and really enjoying Italy, and amazing. And then we came home. And immediately on the plane, there was a massive shift in energy. And my husband was like, I'm just going to watch these movies on my own, and proceeded to do that. 2, 3, I don't know how many movies he was able to watch on that long flight from Italy to New York. And I remember feeling like just absolutely affronted and so offended and so deeply wounded and hurt. And then I proceeded to manage that by starting to immediately dive back into work on my phone using the plane Wi-Fi, which, if anyone has tried to do that, is not an easy thing to do, AKA defaulting to my coping mechanism of pushing. And then hours later, crying by myself in the airplane bathroom, AKA defaulting to a little touch of the coping mechanism of hiding, all to come back into New York in a sense of complete disconnect, complete disassociation, and overwhelm. So that really got my attention. And I took some time to process, along with some sweetheart husband, difficult conversations, and realized and came to understand that we were both dealing with separating ourselves from this amazing trip in our own ways. Yet it was not being done consciously. And for myself, as a highly sensitive, where my husband is not highly sensitive, I recognized that I needed some things that were different than what he needed. And so I began to then recognize that there was a necessity to consciously create the transition space for myself going into a significant event like traveling to a training retreat or even traveling for vacation. And that in the same regard, I needed to consciously create also transition space coming back from a large event. And as I began to treat those transition times as an experience on their own, everything started to happen that much more smoothly, that much more effortlessly, and with that much more peace and experience. So those times of entry and re-entry are an experience to themselves. And I want you to write that down. Travel is an excellent example because someone who's not highly sensitive isn't most likely going to really think about that so much. Their nervous system isn't going to feel the stimulation impact of what it actually means to lift your body up and move it to another location, and everything that's required in order for that to happen. To this day, my husband and I have conversations about what it is to jump out of bed and get going. And jumping out of bed and getting going is never my first choice, ever. And this is me married to a man who through the entire pandemic has been up and out and in the park exercising with the same group of people 3 to 4 times a day, no matter the weather. 3 to 4 times a week. That would really be just totally not highly sensitive. 3 to 4 times a week, no matter the weather, at 6:45 a.m. What? If there were no other people on earth, I would not get up at 6:45 a.m. to meet those other people in the park to go through a boot camp exercise. 100% not going to happen. And that's okay. Now, once I began to create conscious transition, entry and re-entry around travel, I started to see entry and re-entry everywhere. I started to recognize for myself, in order to be able to operate optimally as a highly sensitive, I need to create entry and re-entry into seasons. What I want to eat, what I want to do for moving my body, my sleep, my work schedule, all changes with the season. I started to recognize entry, re-entry between the weekend and the work week. Even if that weekend is not the stereotypical socialized Saturday, Sunday. Why, I imagine, do so many people have the Sunday blues or Sunday anxieties? They need entry, re-entry. I started to recognize that I needed entry, re-entry every day. The beginning of my workday, the close of my workday. I started to recognize that I needed entry, re-entry around higher intensity business activities for myself. Podcast interviews, selling conversations. I started to recognize and see entry, re-entry everywhere. So, why is having entry, re-entry helpful? We go back to the definition. Consciously creating transition in order to reduce nervous system overwhelm. As you really begin to work with this practice of entry, re-entry, then it becomes extremely helpful, especially with either expected or unexpected high times of intensity. So, for example, this past Friday, I had to have surgery and very anxiety producing. So I very clearly created entry, re-entry into surgery, out of surgery. But then I started to recognize subdivisions of entry, re-entry around this time of intensity in order to be able to support myself. It wasn't just about what I needed in order to be able to show up on the day of surgery or what I needed to support myself in returning home from surgery. It was also about what did I need to be able to enter into those first 48 hours, which included a lot of intense physical pain. What did I then need in order to be able to enter into the work week? How did this work week need to look different than any other work week in order to support me? And again, really being able to reduce nervous system overwhelm and be able to operate optimally. That means that this week needs to look different than a typical week. And what did I need for entry, re-entry each day of the week? As with any practice, the more that you engage it, then the more is available to you to go into the nuances of mastery. So, how do we do it? How do we create entry re-entry? First is access of privilege of agency. So write that down. We access privilege of agency by first determining, what do I need and what do I want? That's your OFTU, your order form to the universe. Second, why do I need this? That's self-assessment of previous similar experiences. What worked? What didn't work? And what do you want to do differently? Third, who do I need to talk to? That's a difficult conversation. Fourth, how do I implement this? Because I can guarantee you that what you need and want will be different than those that you're sharing an experience with. And I would write that down too. Now, how can I guarantee that? Because there's only 20% of us in the world who are highly sensitive. So most likely, not everyone that you share your life with is one of those 20%. But as a leader, you get clear on what you want, why you want it, who you need to talk to so that you can have it, and how to go about implementing it. This is also part of the law of process, meaning entry re-entry, as in any highly sensitive strength or skill, is a step by step. One next baby step at a time, and celebrating each step of the way. All of it always coming back to, what do I want? Who's in charge of my nervous system? Who's in charge of my life? So you can choose, consciously or unconsciously, the highly sensitive victim, as in, this is all happening to me. As in, I'm guaranteed to be overwhelmed. Or you can choose highly sensitive empowerment, highly sensitive leadership, and make the conscious choice that you're in charge of your nervous system and you're in charge of your life. And then, as part of the law of process, there are times when we miss the mark because we're human and because we're highly sensitive humans and because we're highly sensitive humans who are in training. So let's talk about the power of re-return. Re-return is recognizing when you have missed the mark or gotten off track. Let's write that down. Re-return is recognizing when you've missed the mark or when you've gotten off track. Now, socialized training will tell you that when you've missed the mark, that means that you have failed. Socialized training will tell you that when you've gotten off track, you've lost your way and you've done something wrong. From that socialized place, missing the mark or getting off track throws us into the highly sensitive coping cycle, where we default to our coping mechanisms. We engage with the superego voice, beating ourselves up, activating the shadows of judgment of self and judgment of others. Rather than that, the power of re-return is that moment of recognition, because that's the choice point. I've missed the mark. I'm off track. Maybe you've missed the mark for a moment. Maybe you've missed the mark for months. Maybe you slipped off track for a week. Maybe you've been off track for a year. It doesn't matter. What matters is how you respond to the recognition. And each time you recognize and you make the choice to re-return, you go up the spiral. So growth, business, life is not a linear ascension line. It's a spiral where you hit the same lessons over and over, but with slight improvement every time. And it's re-return and allowing the power of re-return to work in your favor that brings that growth, that success, and that true transformation. So we have opportunities every single moment to practice entry, re-entry, and re-return as you really begin to incorporate utilizing this tool. Again, from the socialized perspective, it might be like, oh, really? Like, I got to take all this time to like entry, re-entry, like everything. What it's really about is like, oh, this is setting myself up to work optimally. So I actually get to save energy, save time, save money, make more impact and income with less effort.
Thank you for being a part of this Business Miracles podcast episode and for beginning to dip your toe into the journey of highly sensitive leadership training. If you are ready to truly use your sensitivities as strengths in all parts of your work and life, I invite you to connect for a one-on-one chat. You will experience being deeply listened to, and together we'll get a sense of whether the highly sensitive leadership training programs are the best next step for you and your highly sensitive journey at this time. Just go to www.claritycall.com to schedule a conversation. We so look forward to connecting with you. Talk to you soon.